Thank you, Dr. Ila and Kumud. It's a pleasure to be on this platform. Because of the COVID, I would love to come to campus and look at the environment there and interact with the students. Because the new foundation, new schools are going to be the pathway for the future planning. So, thanks a lot for this relevant opportunity to speak on this COVID. Since we are locked down and tensions are building up, uncertainties are mounting, but there is a hope of environmental, getting clear. And, there are opportunity, as you rightly said. So continuing with this, and I really appreciate the timely webinar and also the relevant topic that we have chosen to speak today in this particular context of lockdown and COVID. There's no cure, there's no immediate remedy. People have started saying that we have to live it with it for considerably longer period of time. We don't know, 1 year, 2 year, or maybe 3 years, until we get the medical science remarkable achievement in controlling this COVID. So coming to the major big picture here. How do I go to next slide? So let me begin with here, and let's bring little bit context. I'll be talking for the context of this particular topic, and then I'll detail out the topics. And we have 3 main subtopics to discuss with that we'll talk about a little later. But let me have a broader perspective of economy, environment, and COVID-19 that we are facing right now across the globe, at the national level, regional level, sub-regional level. We have rural-urban divide, everything. So it becomes quite important to understand this particular global phenomena at a different scale. So first scale is, as we know, we are no more inward economy. We are outward economy. We are global economy. So entire world, as the COVID have spread to more than 170 countries, it means that 170 countries are closely linked with each other. Therefore, the virus can pass through from origin to different parts of the world. So in the context of global economy, the environment has always been the global at the first stance, and then the regional and the micro environments are impacting the overall global environment at different locations. So those locations where you have massive productions, they are damaging the environment. Where we don't have massive production, they are comparatively cleaner. But overall, as the climate change and other phenomena, global warming has coming up, it is a global phenomena. It is no more a local phenomena as far as environment is concerned. But of course, the actions at the local level do matters. And the global pandemic, which is the global health now, any innovations will happen any part of the world, it will be shared to the rest of the countries because it's a life and death scenario. Therefore, in this context, I would like to bring it the gain so far. And gain so far is quite visible. Everybody agrees that, okay, clear sky, from Delhi, Dhaulavira is visible, Seine River is clean, Vatican cities, dolphin has come, all those things. So these are, environmental visible claims. But I'm also aware that this is not permanent. This is not going to be the phenomena, the new normals. So new normals is going to last a little bit, but not a permanent phenomena. And therefore, these 4 or 5 gains that we are, this is not the exhaustive list, but it will have more lists. So people are saying the ozone layer has been repaired, the riparian environment, the lake environment is clean now. But these all claims, PM2.5 and carbon dioxide, SOx, NOx, all these have reduced. You can see the Delhi India Gate. I purposefully put this particular photograph, and you can see PM2.5 in the map. Every big cities have registering the drop in that PM. So it's a good gain, yeah. And therefore, the free movements of flora and fauna encroaching our urban spaces, because we have been driving them out of their, urban culture. So this is a good sign, but my caution here is that this has to be taken with a pinch of salt, because this has come at the cost of many lives that we lost in the COVID, across the world, in India also. So we are losing, at the one hand, the lives of human being, and at the one hand, you have environmental gain. So this dichotomy need to be. Therefore, I'm looking at it very critically in this particular scenario. Sorry. Yes. So this is also some examples of, NO2 reduced during the lockdown at Italy, where, millions of lives have been lost, not million, but to some extent, thousands of life has been lost. This is also China, during the lockdown period between January, March, the uh, uh, environmental pollutions is quite clear. It's India, where you have aerosols getting, reduced from Delhi and other parts. So these are like quite evident database, claim that we are happening. Here also CSC report I could quote here. Ganga is clean, people are claiming, but where is the data? Who is explaining those things? So we have to be very, very critical in understanding the environmental gain within this lockdown. And this lockdown had put, this is just rough estimates, but we are like, entire India is locked down, I would say, but to some extent rural area and some of the districts are in the green zone, so they have been given liberty. But approximately 348 million lockdown because of the nationwide COVID scenario. This is again CSC report I'm quoting here. So within this perspective, the logic of gains and how do you sustain these gains is very important. It's just one time benefits. If we come to the previous normals, these gains will vanish. I don't know in how many months or how many days, but it need to be. And therefore, as Dr. Ila is saying, the lessons has to be learned, very, very critically as far as the human advancement is concerned. And therefore, this is the BBC News is pointing out the environmental gain. I'm not going to get into right now because of lack of time. I have to discuss lot many things, but I'll share this PPT and one can see later on and just confirm that how many gains and what are those gains in the environment. Coming to the now major points of our discussion, particularly for this particular webinar, is very relevant. And since I'm also still I claim myself as a student of urban regional planning and also the environmental and urbanization linkages. So these three topics are quite relevant. So what is the relationship between sustainability and regional economy? First, I'm going to talk about, and then how sustainability can be brought in practice while achieving the economic targets. Economic targets need to change now, to my mind. It is going to be a little bit, course corrections in the target, the way we are looking at the economy. And the perspective on achieving sustainable development goals in the line of, dropping with the economy. There are many sustainable goals that is prescribed to us, but how are we going to achieve those goals, is a big questions. And therefore, one by one, these particular, topics need to be discussed in detail. I'm here providing the broad perspective. I'm not going to be like a planner and drawing the pathways that you do this and that and things will be all right. No, I'm not in a position to tell with this particular 2 months experience of lockdown. It is very difficult. Time will change, but yes, a prospective and proactive, ideas that can be brought and discussed again and again, so that one can take, advantage of these particular aspects. So now let us, to my mind, very simplistically put it for the other audience, those who are not a planner, different fields, they might be knowing about the sustainability in various, contexts. But here precisely, I'm going to talk about sustainability in the context of development and how, a country develops. So if we, for me, the sustainability is to have a balance between environment, economy, and equity, so that the first generation, second generations are taken care of in terms of environmental gain, economic gains, and they are equally distributed. But that looks like quite ideal. But how do you ensure it is the problem of governance and other things. The regional economy, to me, is region for me is rural urban put together, in a broader context, and there are many regional theories, functional regional, formal regions. I'm not looking at that particularly, those theories at the moment, but if I take only the functional region, then it becomes quite important for us to discuss rural urban, quantum and rural urban dichotomy put together. So here regional urban economics is basically talking about the regional labor markets, regional input output analysis, not particularly, but regional input and output. Where are those resources coming up? Where are those finished products goes? What is the linkages and application of these models into the rural urban context is what the rural urban and regional economics means here. And therefore, the exchange of goods and services in two defined geography, rural and urban, matters a lot. What are you bringing from rural to urban, and what you're giving from urban to rural is most important aspects. And that determines how sustainable practice that we are doing. And these spatial differences in the factor of productions varies across the region, across the globe also. And the linkages is very clear. How do you ensure a balanced development of all these spatial entity within a region? So coming here, the other researchers have already, and we have been looking at it, that there is a regional differences and there is a problem of regional balance in India. And therefore, I'm bringing this particular aspects. So one is that the regional resources are not ubiquitous. Natural and human resources not generally found together. Therefore, we have to bring in. And therefore, market plays a role. And therefore, labor market also gets exchanged between these two entities. Hence, the location of industrial production systems are unevenly distributed in India and across the world. And these locations are determined by land, labor, capital, technology, and combination of these. Wherever these combinations exist, you find there is a faster development and there is a high efficiency of resource utilization, mobilization. But you have to pay for that also. You increase the environmental load also in those areas. So that's the context here. This is the picture I'm using here with the industrial corridor emerging, across the, peripheral boundaries, but the main industrial regions and corridors are emerging. Industrial and transport corridors are emerging. Delhi, Mumbai is an example. Bangalore, Mumbai is an example. Ahmedabad, Mumbai corridor is an example, which is not here. So there are so many corridors, industrial corridors emerging out in this regional, context because of the location factors of, industrial location factors. So therefore, let me also bring in the second point in this context, which is how sustainability can be brought in practice while we achieve the economic targets. Now, to me, it's a big claim that right now I'm taking a position, because it is going to a huge challenge if we shift our thinking from current economic goal. But nonetheless, the challenge has to be taken somewhere. And in this crisis, I think this challenge is worth taking. So what are our current economic targets? And vis-a-vis within the bracket I have, if you look at the slides here at the right-hand side, I have put in bracket the paradigm shift that we need to visualize and try to adhere to some extent. So right now, currently at the high growth of GDP, which is 10 double digit GDP. What we need to look at is the green GDP or something like gross happiness index that many countries in the world, and Bhutan, our neighbor, is doing. High per capita income is now our goal, economic target, and therefore social security and employment guarantee has to be ensured for those who are marginalized and other peoples, those who cannot afford to have high income within this particular system of economy. Standards of living, we are basically harping on the energy based, and that also fossil fuel energy based, standards of living. I want to propose that non-fossil based energy use and lifestyles is a need of our, so that we can sustain some of the gains that we have been looking at currently. High efficiency in the production system and labor efficiency has to be increased through human skill development and technological advancement. These technological advancement will not come, without price. So we need to also increase our efficiency, our competitive advantages, and bring some more investment in technological advancement and human skill development. Science and technological innovations, I find, is a great area where India as a whole has been really lagging behind in terms of investment, in terms of bringing the companies, bringing the big giants, and asking them to invest in the science and technological innovations. That linkages need to be brought in here. And to me, these linkages has to be in the field of biomedical sciences, physical and chemical sciences, information technology, and biotechnology. Biotechnology, this reminds me Noah Harari's book on 21st century challenges and opportunities, where he precisely talks about, the future of world would be in biotechnology and also information technology. That's how I bring it here up front, that if we need to have a paradigm shift in our, economic targets or goals, these are going to be the substantial or the major outlook of our economic, targets and economic goals. And therefore these kind of pictures of ecological footprints exceeding bio capacity, where the rejuvenations is not possible, and therefore look at India is already more than 100 to 150% of the ecological footprints exceeding biocapacity of regenerations. So therefore we need to bring in this kind of at least a paradigm shift, and therefore details of each paradigm has to be incorporated. The second aspects of high growth of GDP, which I'm talking about, the green GDPs and gross happiness index, how we are going to bring in. Therefore, we have to estimate the environmental loss and degradation while doing the GDP calculation. We call it environmental accounting. It's a big branch, it's an established branch, and we need to consider that. Once you have that sensitivity of environmental accounting, you will try to invest, and you will try to regain those environment, because the compensatory investment will bring lots of opportunity for sustainability in various fields. And therefore we need to understand these things. And I also like to propose here is to include the contribution of non-system of accounting, which is like many unpaid works and homemakers, housewives, not accounted here. So what you are doing, you're subsiding the total GDP, because their contribution has to be, so therefore these are immediate aspects to, look at the growth rate of GDP in a very sustainable manner. From informal economy to more towards formal economy, it's the biggest challenge. I know the limitation also in India, that it's very difficult to bring in everybody in formal economy. But let's try from, particularly from lower section of the society, bring them tenure, bring them, security, social security, and other things, so that their, shocks can be absorbed while there is such kind of COVID and other things. This time, look at the migrants worker, look at the poor people. These particular shocks has, rendered them homeless, deserted, secluded and whatnot. I don't have to tell. All these stories are already there in news. What I'm here suggesting green GDP and balance of the current problem is poverty target, and therefore 22% poor people, housing shortage of 33%, and health. The public health is only 40% of the total infrastructure in India. So the private health, infrastructure services, particularly in this COVID and beyond, should be also put into operations for the larger, societies. Low carbon economy and transport sector is going to be the major one, and industrial sector followed by industrial sector. Transport sectors, as we know, is the major contribution of the pollution in the city and in the country. And therefore, we need to move on to this high per capita income, social security goals, and employment guarantees. So we need to do a trade-off between higher per capita income and social security employment guarantee. These are just piecemeal schemes. And insurance, I don't believe, because I follow kind of a holistic and inclusive development principles, and therefore insurance has to be bought by the target groups. And if there is a lack of capacity of buying this insurance, there is no meaning of this kind of provisions. They have to be, for me, it's health for all, and other security, social security. For priority sectors, health and education need to be brought in under this secured and available to all the people, both in rural area and in urban area. Decent work opportunity, dignified working environment is the need of our. And look at this, because of lack of this decent work opportunities and dignified environment, you can see the roads where there's no car, but there are many migrant people, and accidents and other things are happening. So old, marginalized, women, differently able people, citizens has to be given priority at this particular moment, so that gains of sustainability has to be brought in under the very goals of our economic achievements. Standard of living that I was talking about, the non-fossil fuel based. So green products promotion, organic food supply chain, non-conventional is a big way, and I know the current governance, both in center, in other parts of India, are trying to their level best to include the non-conventional energy sources, but it's not adequate. I think it's grossly lacking. We've not been shifting. One hand, we are targeting the non-conventional, and other hand, the huge investment are coming up in the conventional energy, particularly thermal and fossil fuel-based energy. Therefore, the situation has to be moved from conventional to non-conventional. Low carbon footprints is one of the idea that one needs to, wherever possible, in the production system, in the lifestyle. And this zero waste management, 3R model, everybody talks about. I'm not going to emphasize this particular. So what I was talking about, the standards of living, matters a lot in sustaining this particular environmental gain. And as I listed here, from green products to, zero waste has to be incorporated in our lifestyle at every sector of the economy. And therefore, the high efficiency in production system and labor, productivities has to be ensured. At the same time, there are many research also coming up, how a high efficiency can be achieved. But I would focus more on skill upgradation of the labor force, particularly in both region, rural and urban region, because there are many rural labor force which has very, very low skills, and therefore their employability is a big question, either in agriculture sector or in non-agriculture sectors, and in rural and urban area both. So therefore there is a limitation of labor migration, labor mobility. But therefore, whoever comes to the urban area, they are put into the menial jobs because they lack the skills, and therefore the indecent job opportunity, low living conditions, all these things happens. And new opportunity in emerging sectors is biotechnology and information technology. I'm not saying directly that rural labor force will come and grab this information technology and biotechnology, but there are many opportunity of skill development at the rural sectors itself. Zero carbon policy has to be promoted because that brings in the supply chain and other production systems. Green technology in production systems has to be promoted. An incentive for a large industry to adapt to green technology. And unless the large industry sectors, hello, is it okay?
Yes, sir, audible.
Okay, okay. So large industries are capable enough to adapt to the green technology because green technology is little bit costlier compared to our conventional technology. ISO standards to be maintained in each of the production system. But what I'm proposing here and I'm visualizing, and these are in practice all across the world, the circular economy, industrial symbiosis, and eco-industrial park. In India also, we have many industries, locations where eco-industrial parks have been practiced, circular economy in terms of zero waste out of the production systems. They're well established. China is doing in terms of special economic zones. They're all circular economy. We need to adapt these particular production systems in our practices in our regions. And since these production systems are concentrated in urban areas, the focus of sustainable production system has to be in urban area, particularly to begin with, and then it can go to the rural area. But rural area, by and large, the production systems are, except for the methane gas emissions, the sustainable. But with the rural advancement, rural mobility, rural technological advancement, there also we need green production systems in that particular sense. So we need to focus on this particular thing. And therefore, coming to the rural area, because of the regions cannot be seen in isolation, urban cannot seen in isolation. Therefore, we need to move towards rural area and entire transformations. As we all know, 50% rural workforce are there, more than 50% rural workforce. India's workforce are rural workforce and they are disguised workforce. Therefore, a transformation is needed there, So short-term and medium-term goals for the rural transformations to me is, since these migrant workers are now going back to their home at the rural, preferably rural areas, majority of them belongs to the rural area. I think these schemes of MNREGA and social natural capital building has to be, promoted in a big way. And if you look at the practice of MNREGA, this creates a social capital, environmental capital in rural area. So it's a asset building. It's not only the employment generation scheme, but it also builds rural assets in terms of road, in terms of rejuvenation of lakes, rural lakes, and connectivities and afforestation, everything. Therefore, we need to focus more heavily on this. Sustainable agriculture practice, I mean that less use of, nitrogens, phosphates, and other things in the practice. I know there will be repercussion on the production immediately, but this can be practiced and decentralized, production system as far as agro-based production system is concerned. Why not urban areas should also be proposed, agriculture, urban agriculture we're talking right now, and that will bring food security to the urban area. I don't think to a large extent, but to some extent, of course. Large scale non-farm sectors in activities has to be brought in because agriculture alone cannot help rural transformations. We need to move out from the farm to non-farm activities. Huge investment in agriculture and allied sectors and extension services, animal husbandry are paramount, and these are by and large, less polluting industries, compared to the, chimneys that we put up in industries in our urban areas by mass production systems. Incentivize the agriculture value additions. That's much more important. Agriculture sector is not doing value addition of their products. Processing is not happening at the farmer's end. That has to be inculcated there so that their value additions and the capital gains can be given to the rural folks. Investment in rural health and education, I think one of the biggest challenges and opportunity now is to bring in this rural health and education aggressively, so that there is a minimum skill to be applied to those rural labor force. If they are not schooled, and if they are not gone to school, how can skill building can happen? At least a basic minimum level of education is required for skill upgradations, and therefore you bring in rural skill upgradation both in farm and non-farm sectors, so that these labor force can be accommodated. And non-polluting rural small and micro enterprises are the key to absorb these rural forces in that. Now the balance is, if these migrant workers do not come to cities, how our cities economy and industry will run? I mean, you need to now have the changes in the production processes, bring in more technology, bring in more innovations in that sense, so that one can, and the rural absorption rate for migrant workers is not going to be sustainable. They will have to come back to the city and work together in that particular context. But now let me conclude here and then invite the question answer, so that those aspects that I have not dealt with can also be brought in, as Kumud already hinted one of the questions. So therefore, and I'm sure I've missed out many things in my presentation, but nonetheless, let me conclude here. So therefore, what I'm trying to tell here is that there is a need for paradigm shift in our economic goals. That growth of GDP, harping on double-digit GDP is going to multiply the economic activities, and the environmental degradation is going to happen, because India lacks technology and finances to bring in the larger green technology and technological advancement. Therefore, we need to move from high economic growth rates to GDP, which is particularly green. Unprecedented change that I am proposed already is entire production systems, and majorly in the transport system. You run biodiesel. Biodiesel, I think, has not been promoted both at the research level and at the practice level. It will also have a major boost in agriculture sectors. If you are trying to look at the biodiesel problem, there would be some problem of margins of pollutions in that, but that can be taken care of, and it has a linkages between rural and urban labor force utilizations. New normals will demand more green spaces and green energies to sustain the gains of COVID worldwide, which is very important, and therefore the rejuvenate. I would suggest that we should now go completely paperless wherever it is possible, so that the conservation of the trees and other things has to be, so that whatever carbon dioxide comes in the atmosphere, at least they are being taken care of. Decarbonizations leading to the low carbon footprints. That's what the second points I was talked about in detail. Circular economy. Now what happens? Our economy is like, we consume, we produce, and we waste. Circular economy says that no, zero waste. When you consume, produce, and do not waste, become circular. So from linear production system to a closed loop production system is what it is required at the moment, and there are evidences across the world that circular economy, our SEZ, these special economic zones and special investment areas, should have circular economy principle, and therefore the environment can be taken care of. Industrial symbiosis has to be practiced, because the one industry's raw material can become another industry's waste. One waste product can become raw material for another industries. That kind of an eco-industrial parks has been attempted in India, but not in a large scale. And then decentralization, decentralized production system for essential goods and services, local supply chain, city level food security through urban agriculture, housing, not shelter, and health for all has to be a priority within this lockdown and beyond lockdown, for at least for two years to go, because medical science has some limitations to bring new innovations in this particular global pandemic. Thank you all for listening to me with some technical, glitch in between. But by and large, this is what I have to tell on this particular topic. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir, for giving your insight, your actual insight, particularly with respect to this topic. Now I would like to take some questions from the chat box, and personally few participants have approached me for those questions. I would like to read those questions on behalf of the participants. Anil sir, question.
Yes, go ahead, Kumud. Yes, sure.
And that is based on what is the role of donors and grants in combating COVID and its effect on sustainable development.
Oh, yes. Oh, that's a very good question, Kumud, I would say. Because India, as you know, we are a developing country. We can't afford to adapt everything immediately and do the course correction methods. We need donor agencies, of course. And in that sense, biggest donor agencies, multilaterals and bilaterals put together, World Bank, and country level donor agencies like DFID and OSAID and other German aid development corporations. These are our bilateral and multilateral agencies that they are helping us. So their roles are going to be much more, crucial to help developing countries. And mind it, India is the second largest population. So any, problem with the human, 1/3, or India, China put together 1/3 of the world population. So anything that affects in India affects the global sense. And so a global environment also. Therefore, they need to bring in some, targeted, supports for India, particularly in health sectors, particularly in green energy. German development. That's how I was putting this eco-industrial park. It is the German development as a GIG that has been helping government of India to bring in, eco-industrial parks in the production system. So I think their roles are going to be very, very crucial and in a much more aggressive sense, because the entire world economy is going to be, downward trends. India is going to fall back again at the level of 90s and 80s. And therefore, that time, aggressive, world support was required. And therefore, we need to respect those, bilateral supports in that sense. Yes.
Okay, thank you, sir. There is one more question from the participants side. Mr. Apurv Shinde, he has asked about how will skill upgradation help economy, and time will come where there will be a lot of laborers swapping up for job opportunities. How can this implementation be brought?
Yes, I think this is quite a relevant question, because since there is no job, what will these skilled people? Skilled people are now jobless. My point here is that we should open up the skills in the new sectors. Hello, hello.
Yes,
Kumud?
yes,
Yeah.
sir, you are audible. Please continue. Sir.
Yes, I'm hinting the skill upgradation in new sectors, which is the need of our, and therefore I precisely told that it is going to be in IT sector. Since we are now locked down and we're working on, work from home scenario, so skill development in biotechnology, which will give an, synergy to the advancement in medical sciences and bio, consumptions in our society. So those sectors are emerging. There would be much more emerging sectors post-COVID, health infrastructure building, health services, hospital management. Lots of opportunities are going to be crucial in that sense. And therefore, this entire skill upgradation program has to be linked with those new emerging, sectors of employment. That's my point. Yes.
Okay, sir. Thanks a lot. And I would like to ask you a few more questions based on our participant questions. And what do you think about the Sustainable Development Goal? Will be able to achieve that by 2030? What is your opinion on that, sir?
Yeah, right now my knee-jerk reaction is going to be no, we are not, because in order to achieve the goals, SDGs, SDG goals are all conditionals. If you have to achieve, the poverty reduction by 20%, 30%, 50% by the year 2025 or 2030, I think with this reduced investment coming to these sectors, reduce economic generation activities, it's going to be very, very difficult in particularly for SDG 11, resilient and safe cities. The carbon resilient city, and the health resilient, now we need to talk. It will require huge investment in health sectors, and to my mind I think this is achievable. Look at the countries which has invested more in public health system. They are fighting the COVID-19 in a better way than those who have investment in private sectors, from the health, for the health services. That's my blanket statement, but we need to, there are exceptions that even private sector health system has tackled. But by and large, this is the case. Therefore, we need to look at these SDGs. Relook of SDGs is now post-COVID is the challenges. It's not going to be achieved in that stipulated time that we have, because the economy has shrunk down. People are without job. So that's going to be difficult. Yes. Good question, Bhat.
Okay, thank you, sir. And another question is, what is your opinion on various agreements such as International Solar Alliance and other alternative sources of energy which is being adopted and implemented by India?
I think the way we are, moving towards non-conventional energy is, I think it's very slow, and the commitment, I think, is lacking. The political commitment is lacking. The financial commitment is lacking in these particular directions, because we have investment in conventional infrastructure, conventional energy infrastructure. So we don't want to lose it, and therefore there is a lethargy in implementing non. And I would like to emphasize that the current government has solar mission, and there are various aggressive program, but the scale is not the way it should be for India of 1.3 billion populations, and therefore we need to really work hard, more investment in terms of non-renewable solar panel, wind energy, and hydropower. We have, India has a huge potential of hydropower. So these are the potential area where the investment is required, from both international, national, and domestic players, and therefore we need to move towards this. We need an aggressive policy towards non-energy. See, the trade-off we are doing right now in urban sector is that electric buses, electricity run transport system, but the electricities are coming from the thermal power. So cumulative impact of environment remains the same, and therefore we need to. Therefore, the paradigm shift in our energy consumption is very important.
Okay.
Kumud?
Yeah, sir. You are audible, sir, and thank you a lot. We are actually running short of time, and therefore, quickly, sir, I will read few more questions. One question is about getting your ideas. Yeah. Yes, one question is about getting your ideas on the creation of parallel economy, creation of rural and urban economy together simultaneously.
See, these two cannot be separated. Rural economy cannot live in isolation. Urban economy cannot live in isolation. There is a huge linkages, and we call it equilibrium. This economic equilibrium is very important. What is right now happening is that the flow of goods and services happening, from both rural to urban and urban to rural. In this case, we are taking rural resources in terms of raw materials, rural labor in terms of labor inputs in the cities. The production systems are in the city, and then the finished products goes back to rural area in our hinterland, and also goes to other hinterlands of the cities. India is by and large a domestic consumption country. We are not export surplus. We are not exporting more than what we are importing. So therefore, separation of rural parallel economy and urban parallel economy is not possible in that sense. And that should not be promoted also, because otherwise rural labor force will remain in rural labor force, and they will never come out from the rural labor force to urban labor force. So that extent has to be provided. Enabling factors has to be given to all the opportunity for rural as well as urban areas.
Sir, one of the question is basically related to the what is the actual role of zero waste discharge on sustainable development goal?
I think zero waste discharge is the ultimate goal of achieving sustainability, environmental sustainability particularly. Any production system which creates low carbon footprints in its entire production cycle is always beneficial. So if a production system, suppose for example an SEZ area, the huge production happens, targeted production happens, multi products production happens, so you create a huge lots of waste within that system. If you can manage those waste within that particular territory, it doesn't go back to the other systems. It makes sense in that particular, and the actual environmental damage gets reduced. But of course, the zero waste comes with the price, because you have to recycle them, you have to reprocess them, your technology has to be advanced in that sense. Otherwise, you can't just prescribe and everybody will follow. There is technological, financial, sustainability related to that zero waste. Without that, we would not be able to achieve zero waste. So use, and therefore I think the role of big players, I'm not asking international agencies to come in, the big players, the big industries need to bring in and that particular zero waste technologies. Initially their profit margin will be reduced, but why not at the cost of nation building, at the cost of environmental sustainability? I think we need to and look at I'll give you examples of all the innovations that has happened in terms of zero carbonization and reduced carbonization in the world has all come from big industries. DuPont's, and in the automobile industries also, it's a big player that bringing in Euro 4, Euro 5, Euro 6 and other things. So all these big industries are going to innovate in the innovations technologies so that the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is reduced.
Okay, thanks a lot, sir. And I will just quickly pick up the last question, which has been asked by our one of the faculty, Ms. Shashi Mehta, and she wants to ask you, what are the major areas where government has paid attention towards green economy, and how far it becomes successful till now? What are your observations around this?
I think our government is committed. I would say they are committed, but they are the constraints are much more than their commitment. So like solar panel, wind energy, and biodiesel and other things has been a good initiative. And rural, transformations that is happening in terms of sustainable rural development for organic practices and all those things. I think, but the kind of scale that we are looking at it in India is very, very low. I would say it can become a mission statements like, Swachh Bharat mission. So Green India mission has to come up in that sense, Swachh Bharat mission also, there are flip side of the Swachh Bharat mission that I'm not going to talk right now, but there are achievements also. We have been able to achieve to some extent, at least open defecations and toilets, and that has health impacts also. So therefore, green energy will certainly will have a health impacts on the society if we are committed, and also the required investment comes in at the right place. It's going to be too late because the population multipliers are increasing day by day. Our population growth has not been stabilized so far. We are increasing, and therefore we need to bring in aggressively in green investment, green building. We have started, but less takers because of the financial constraints. So finance would be one of the major challenges for adapting to green energy. But big players, I'm still again saying again and again, that need to be encouraged, incentivized, and they would bring in those technology if government is unable to do that.
Okay, thanks a lot, sir. And as we are already running short of time, I just want to conclude here now. And based on your intellectual insight, I can just say in that conclusion that we need to be really far-sighting in terms of speculating the results and post consequences of our present actions and our actions which we have taken previously in the past. And based on that, we need to be really very proactive to bring in this greener economy into our system and to achieving our steps towards achievement of the sustainable development goal. Thanks a lot, sir. And on behalf of Amity School of Architecture and Planning, once again, I would like to thank you for sparing some time for us and sharing your views based on this very contemporary issue, particularly in planning and environmental sustainability. Thanks a lot once again, sir.
Right, Kumud, thanks a lot. It is almost became my class of 40 students at SEP. So I can see that there are still 49, 39 students. Not a student, I'm sorry to say, they might be professionals also. But I was very comfortable in talking to, all of you on these online systems. Yes. Thanks a lot for bringing me in this network of discussions which is happening in the COVID and beyond COVID also. Thank you so much, both Kumud, you and Ila, for connecting to me. Thanks a lot. Thanks, participants, for listening to my lengthy, maybe, or whatever sense that I have made. Thanks a lot. Yeah, thank you.
Sir, and I would like to thank each of the participants who has connected with us, and my sincere apologies for the technical error which we had in between, and thanks a lot to all of you.
Yeah.
Okay, sir.
Thank you. Bye-bye.